Hi, you guys. Today for Reading Workshop, we are going to be looking for the underlining ideas in a narrative nonfiction. Basically, we're going to continue taking the strategies that we learned with fictional writing and we're going to apply it to nonfiction. I'm going to be honest with you, today is going to be really hard. So pay close attention to what's going on in this video and really pay close attention to the story that we're going to use as an example to help you really understand this concept. Before we get started, you can take a look at my small CD collection from my days in radio. If you look down right about here, you can see my headphones. Still have my own personal headphones from radio. So let's get started. You guys, when an author writes a story, they write a story to convey an idea that they have, to share an idea. It's the idea that the writer has in mind when they're writing that allows a storyteller to shape the information or the experience into something that fits together so that the story is just not a bunch of details and experiences just thrown together. There's actually a purpose to it. And while that's the writer's goal, to try to share that idea with you, it should be your goal as a reader to discover what is that underlining idea behind the text that the writer is trying to share. You almost have to be like a detective to pick apart what's happening. So, I really know what you're probably thinking right now is, oh, great, Mr. Saraceni, that made absolutely no sense whatsoever. And trust me, I'm with you on it. What we're going to do is we're going to practice this strategy together. And I'm going to read you a story called The Mummy's Curse. It's one that I started reading to you a little bit before in previous videos. While we're reading it, really pay attention to the story, listening carefully. And then at the end, we're going to go through a chart that you're going to screenshot that's going to help you uncover the underlining idea behind the text. As I read you the story, please follow along and really try to comprehend the story because we're going to have several questions that you're going to need to answer at the end of this. I must find the tomb. Howard Carter had been saying the same thing for years. Now it was 1922, the fifth year he had spent digging through the sand and rocks in Egypt, in the Valley of the Kings. He was searching for a tomb that no grave robbers had ever found, the tomb of Tutankhamun, the boy pharaoh. Carter Scott scoffed when he was warned of the curse of death comes on the wings to he who enters the tomb of the pharaoh. Each day, his men worked in the sweltering heat and dust. They seemed to be getting nowhere. Then one morning, as they dug in the soft rubble, a shovel clanged. When Carter arrived, he was met by an excited hush. The men had found a stone step. Another 15 steps were quickly uncovered. Could this be Tutankhamun's tomb? You guys notice how this is a narrative nonfiction? It's a nonfiction story, but there are narrative characters in it. Very important to keep in mind. Carter was the first to look. What he saw left him speechless. Later he told people what he had seen. Strange animals, statues, and gold everywhere, the glint of gold. When Carter arrived home that night, his servants were wailing and shouting. "What's wrong?" Carter demanded above the din. "You have opened the tomb," wept a servant. "We are cursed." He told Carter that a cobra had swallowed Carter's pet canary at the exact moment the tomb was open. Cobras were a symbol of royalty in ancient Egypt. They were said to spit fire at Pharaoh's enemies. Carter was not worried. The next day he began to clear the first room of the tomb. More than a mile of cotton wadding was used to wrap up the items. Carter's team packed games, clothing, pottery, musical instruments, and statues. Most of these were sent to Cairo, Egypt's capital, by boat. The more valuable artifacts went on train accompanied by armed guards. Finally, The men were ready to unseal the third door. Slowly and carefully, Carter started chipping away the rocks and plaster. Then he stopped. Before him was a wall of solid gold. It was the front of a huge golden shrine. Carter was astonished. He knew this was the greatest ancient Egyptian find ever. Inside the golden shrine were three more shrines, and inside the last was a sarcophagus, a stone coffin. But that was not all. Within the sarcophagus were three more coffins, each fitting snugly inside the other. The final coffin was made of solid gold. Inside it was the mummified body of Tutankhamun. But before anyone could investigate further, disaster struck. It began when Carter's patron, Lord Carnarvon, was bitten on the cheek by a mosquito. He accidentally cut open the bite while shaving. The bite soon became infected and fever set in. A few days later, Lord Carnarvon's family raced to his bedside. He was very ill. Then, early one morning, it was all over. Lord Carnarvon died. At the very moment of his death, all the lights in Cairo went out. They stayed out for several hours, and no one could explain why. Back at Lord Carnarvon's home in England, Susie, his dog, pricked up her ears, howled once, then dropped dead. Other deaths followed. A French scientist who visited the tomb died after a fall. An X-ray specialist on his way to examine the mummy died unexpectedly. Then a wealthy American died from a virus after visiting Tutankhamun's tomb. Were all these deaths all coincidence? Or was the curse of the mummy to blame? No one knows for sure. Ooh, good story, right? If you want, and you want to hear it again so you can comprehend it better, go ahead and rewind this video to rewatch and listen to the story again. The more you know it, the easier this strategy is going to be. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to pause this video and take a screenshot of this page. And you might even want to crop this chart here because this is what you're going to use to help you uncover the underlining idea in a true story or in a narrative nonfiction. I am going to do this as an example to the story we just read, The Mummy's Curse. And as a reader, I have to decide between which one of these questions do I want to use to help me uncover that lesson. And I'm going to use the first one. Find the time in the story when the main character had to make an important choice. And what kind of consequence does the choice have? And is there a lesson in the story? So we know that Howard made a lot of choices throughout this story. There's no doubt. We know that Howard knew about the curse, but he decided to open up the tomb anyway, right? And we also know that he didn't really even care about the curse because he didn't really believe in it. But he knew that there was a chance that people could die from it because that was all part of the curse. So you can see that there's he made a choice and there was a consequence attached to that choice. He knew if he opened up the tomb, there's a chance that this curse could happen. He knew if he pursued the tomb, there's a chance that people could die. And his decision possibly led to all those people's deaths. I mean, think of all the people that died in the story. You had Lord Carnarvon, you had that American, rich American, the X-ray scientist, the dog, Howard's own canary, all died in a pursuit of this tomb. So, was there a time in this story when the main character had to make an important choice? Yeah, there's been several with Howard. And what kind of consequences does this choice have? Ultimately, it was death. So is there a lesson in this story? Well, let's think about that. If you have to make a decision and you have to make a choice and you know there's a consequence attached to that choice, what do we always say to you about the choices that you make in life? Absolutely. that you have to take responsibility for your actions. So if I'm thinking about what is the lesson or even the theme of this story, it would be to take responsibility for your actions. And that would be the lesson learned or the theme. Do you guys remember when we did that whole thing on theme and you guys were rocking it, making those bumper stickers? This is basically the same thing. You're looking deeply at the story and you're thinking about it and you're finding that need, the need that's not being said, but you have to pull it from the story based on the details that are there. It's the same thing. You rock theme before, so I know you can rock this. So, what is it that I expect from you today during reading workshop? Well, number one, I expect you to read long and strong. I want you to read these books like you read your fiction books. I want you to get lost in your story. Nonfiction is amazing when you find the right one. And then number two, I want you to determine what is the underlining idea in your story. Please go back and refer to the chart that you screenshot. I say screencast, but screenshot to help you. And then at the end of reading workshop, I expect everyone to have found the underlining idea in your story. Put your work into the app of your choice and then submit your work at the end of reading workshop to the standard-based grading folder. Good luck, you guys. I know you can do it, and happy reading.